Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the Caledonia Community Schools Board of Education special meeting for November 9th. If you'd all rise for the pledge, please. Welcome to all of you. Julie, could we please have roll call?
Asper here. Barbara Garcia.
Here.
Clement.
Here.
Morris.
Here.
Sadu.
Here.
White.
Here. Welcome to all of you. I do see some familiar faces out there, and to those of you that are here that were elected last night, congratulations to all of you. This is our school board meeting that is held in the public, and you are welcome to address the board. We do ask that if you do address the board that you do fill out one of these comment cards so that we do have contact information to follow up with you if necessary. You have 3 minutes at that time. I do ask that you address the entire board as a whole. Please do not bring up personnel issues, and we'd ask that you not bring up individual student issues as well at that time. At this point in time, we are going to move on to the consent agenda, which we have the October 27th, 2022 minutes and October 27th, 2022 closed session meeting minutes.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
May I have a second?
Second.
By Brittany. Are there any questions or corrections on that? All right, can we please have a roll call?
Asper, yes. Barbara Garcia.
Yes.
Clement.
Yes.
Morris. Sadu.
Yes. Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. Just for the record, Katie ended up with a sick child over the last 2 days and did not have someone to leave her with, so she apologized for missing, but I will be updating her after the meeting, yes. So based on the content of the meeting tonight, we're going to do something that we've done on occasion when we've had something like this come up. I do have 2 sections on here for public comment. Again, public comment before and after discussion items. So based on what you're here for, if this is the time when you'd like to do public comment, I would ask that those cards be turned in the back corner of the room. Otherwise, we'll go ahead with our discussion and we can hold the public comment until after. Do you have any cards right now? Just for the second. Okay. At this point in time then, we're going to move on to our reports and information, which is our 2023 supplemental bond update with Dr. Martin and Mr. Hess. Just to preface some of this conversation, based on the fact that we've had several board meetings recently, there were questions raised by board members, by several different board members, wanting to know a little bit of information. One is we made the decision that we really needed to observe the fact that we didn't want to go into our fund balance, so we were using the remainder of our bond money to finish the projects that were listed, and that we would go out for a supplemental bond to finish Dutton. That was our plan. In addition to that, we had several board members that asked for information saying, if we're going to look at this, is there anything else that we should consider? So with that, we did ask Dr. Martin and Mr. Hess to just simply make sure that we know all the options that we're talking about, the timeframes that we need. That's the information that we're going to hear tonight so that we can have discussion and we know exactly how we're moving forward from this time. Did I cover it all?
Yes.
All right. It's all yours.
All right. If we can go ahead and pull up the presentation, we'll get started. Again, this is what we are posing as a supplemental bond, and to complete the vision of the original bond request and look at some facility reinvestment opportunities. So if we can go to the next one. Do we have a clicker? Okay. So first, what we did is, for the supplemental bond, we're looking at a couple of things in addition to a new Dutton Elementary, which is the primary focus of this bond. One is to complete the phase 2 of the Calplex project, which the district played a role in as far back as 2009 with the community, and I'll get into that a little bit more. The other one is the stadium renovation. So in our original project, we first contemplated a brand new stadium over at the Calplex area. And then as we saw the price escalation where we had to increase the amount towards the community center, we stripped that down to a renovation. And then when we saw more increases, we took that down to 0. So we wanted to bring that back in. And then there's a small list of other priority projects that we see in the district that between now and 2028, if this bond does pass, we would need to take as big capital expenditures anyway. So moving forward and completing the vision, I'm going to kind of talk about the 3 areas: New Dudden, stadium renovations, and then Calplex, just kind of at a broad level. And then we'll kind of get into the areas where we see as potential reinvestment in some of our facilities. All of the numbers that you see tonight, and I'll kind of speak to it at the end, you will notice that all of them are cost estimates based on what we would project for 2023. With that being stated, generally the bond process itself is a pretty substantial process, between 18 to 24 months, because we were challenged to try to get this prepared for a May election. We have to move as fast as we can with the information that we have or what we could glean from the bond team. Some of the things that we are looking at as it relates to New Dudden, the original vision was to create a 60,000 square foot building that would house K through 4, and it would be a 4-strand building. So with ample classroom for kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, as well as some ample space for PE, cafeteria, library, breakout rooms for working with small groups, as well as class for special ed. The other thing that became a sticking point is we wanted to have 2 entryways in and out of this new facility. So when we identified this facility, one of the things that we wanted to try not to do is recreate more of a traffic concern. So a lot of our elementaries, it's pretty much only one way in, one way out, and you just get a lot of challenges anywhere when you're talking about that many cars and buses coming in, going at the same time. But we felt like moving forward, whenever we have an opportunity for a new facility, we wanted to take that in consideration. And we went back and forth about pulling it off because that extra drive to 76 was about a $1 million addition. And when we were challenged with pricing, we wanted to take that out. And then the other thing, which we feel will be a positive feature here, is a barrier-free playground. So essentially, the point is we wanted to go back to how it was originally scoped and designed. And projecting out that estimation will be in the range of $35 to $40 million. Next is the stadium renovation. We will be doing this in stages, so we will be adding a turf field for the football team, and probably adding a scoreboard out of the current 2020 bond funds, and some other minor things that we can do. But we do not have money out of the previous bonds to cover everything and do a refresh of a stadium. So in this particular case, we would be earmarking about $6.5 million for a stadium renovation. So it would be kind of piecing it together with work from the 2020 bond, and if the 2023 supplemental bond pass, we'll continue to work on the bleachers, seating, press box, renovate the team rooms and concessions, and update the track. Just in context, what we're seeing, there was recently one of our neighboring districts that's in our conference just came up with a new facility that was about $17 million. So what we're looking at is really small in scale, but that was something that we had to completely go away from because of what we couldn't do due to price escalations. Next is Calplex. So when we went for the 2020 bond, one of the things that we had done is we reached out to the president of the Cal Youth Sports Association, and I started to learn about the grand vision, if you will, for phase 1 and phase 2 of the Calplex. And so what we promised is that we would add at least one more play field. We had identified a soccer field that we wanted to add with the 2020 bond. As things have become challenged, doing that was probably not realistic moving forward. With this supplemental bond, part of this process, it involved us, it involved the Caledonia Township, it involved the Caledonia Youth Sports Association to develop the 2 phases of this community space, which we as a district do not use, but all of our elementary age kids. It is the play space for sports for our elementary age kids. And by adding more play space there, it will probably help us in our district. Right now, we maintain about 320 acres in our total makeup of our district. And we only have about 1.5 maintenance and ground staff members to do that. So when you have varsity sports, sub-varsity sports, and then you have community sports going, it's very challenging for us to keep up with the needs of the field. So adding more recreational play space, we see this as an opportunity to more than just add that one additional space that we had committed to, but to try to bring that to life as it was originally envisioned in the past. So it'll be adding baseball and soccer fields or working with the Cal Youth Sports to identify what we could do and how far that funding would go. And the other challenge there is parking. So we wanted to try to tackle some of the parking challenges with that facility. What we have identified is earmarking about $3 million out of the supplemental bond for that project. Next, we were looking at some facility reinvestment. So the first one, and I'll probably ask Matt to jump in for clarity if I missed something or if there's some questions, but we wanted to look at the Duncan Lake Complex and replace the entryway in the facade and extend the cafeteria when you're coming off the craft side of the building. If you're walking in that, there is, on a rainy day, you will notice that it is leaking pretty good within that building coming along the walls. Also, because we have switched to the 7-8 facility and coming out of COVID, the way we use that space, most of the kids eat lunch in the cafeteria, but we have a healthy number of kids every day who are eating lunch out in the main corridor. So we wanted to redesign that space similar to what we did with Craft to make that a little bit larger, but also to take care of that particular entryway to make sure that it's safe and secure and that it's no longer leaking. In addition to that, there's several sections of the roof around the Early Childhood Center, the old Central Administration Office, as well as other portions of that massive facility that needs to be corrected and improved. So that was kind of what we wanted to do, and I think, if I can remember correctly, each one of these projects were in the $1 million to $1.5 million range. Mr. Hess, is that about right? And did I forget anything there? Okay. Next, Scotland Yard. That facility itself is beautiful, but with any turf, at some point you will reach the end of the lifespan. So by the time, if we're successful with the supplemental bond, we will be at or beyond the recommended lifespan for that turf. I believe right now is about 16 years. Yeah, somewhere in there. So when you get to 15 to 20 years, it really depends on how well your maintenance and how great the install of that turf is. And so looking at the usage of a growing community, that's another area that we identify as wanting to improve or redo. And at some point, we're going to have to do that anyway. Also, we wanted to kind of replace the dugout and add some storage for some of the equipment out there and upgrade the bleachers in that particular area as well. Next, and this should start going a little faster, Kettle Lake. That parking lot, we are unfortunately landlocked at Kettle Lake, but we do believe that we can maybe improve a little bit of the traffic flow and exits there, as well as create additional parking space for the staff and for the parents. And then at Paris Ridge, they have a play surface similar to what we see for the new Dudden. So it's more of a rubberized type play space or surface area. What's important with these is it allow more or greater access for children with special needs who have mobility issues to access the playgrounds much better than sand or wood chips. And so a lot of that is at the point where it's starting to separate in areas and just need to be replaced or refreshed. So that's kind of a project that we want to take on with the supplemental bond as well. Mr. Hess, was there anything to add to that one? Okay. Another request that we had, and we said we would do it if funds were available. Storage facility for our band equipment and instruments for the district and the students. So if you spend time in the band room, you will notice over in the side, we really don't have a place to store a lot of our equipment, or we store it in a, sometimes we'll store things in some very odd spots, I guess. And so we're looking at trying to maybe make more of a secure storage space to continue to protect and extend the life of the instruments and the equipment for our band, as well as the students who either rent or purchase various musical instruments. And new buses. We have been trying to integrate bus fleet into our general fund, but if we are going to have an opportunity with supplemental bond, we felt like this was a great time to maybe fast track the ability to upgrade our fleet. This is something that the district has done many times in previous years. We kind of went away from it recently, but just giving some of the fiscal challenges that we see coming ahead, we probably want to be a little bit proactive and put this into a supplemental bond like we have done in previous years. So this is pretty typical for a lot of districts. So this would be just us returning to an old practice. And then also we wanted to make sure that we had some funds in place for the potential demolition of Dudden once a new facility is built. We have not had the time to put together a committee to really study what would happen with Dudden when it's over. And depending on who you talk to, some maybe you can sell it as is, others you may demolish the building based on where it's at, and it may be even more advantageous because it's in the middle of an industrial complex. So just as a clean site for companies also make that very attractive. So something that we need to explore, but it's a pretty costly endeavor if you go down this road. And so we wanted to make sure that we had the appropriate funds in place for that. Next is technology upgrades. One of the things that we have done is we have moved away from adding laptops and computers, and we fund that out of general fund. But every so many years, and like we have done in the past, you have some large ticket technology needs. And so we know that we need some SAN servers, network, upgrade our network wireless system, because we know what it is today will not be sufficient moving forward, and we already have some challenges from time to time. Also, some audio-visual work for our classrooms, gymnasium, cafeteria, and media center. Mr. Vutavine, is there anything that I neglected, or would you like to add? Okay. And all of these things we are able to do at a zero increase tax rate. We did go out to PFM to look to see what our bonding capacity was. So the first time we came for the 2020 bond, we intentionally did not max out our bonding capacity. Because we are in a situation with such significant increase, we either had to make the tough decision to eliminate things that we feel is very important, such as Dudden, or a laundry list of other things. But we went back out to see, well, if we go out for a bond again, we know we left about $40 million on the table. What is the value of that today? And at the time that we went out for a bond, and I think we looked at it in 2019, we didn't have a few industries that we currently have now, and there's more houses. So when we looked at the total capacity today, we are able to get $125 million more dollars or additional dollars for any bond program or any bonding need that we have. So what we are presenting tonight is really a $61 million bond request. That is using about 49% of the current bonding capacity, leaving another $64 million for future district needs if that is necessary. We'd also would seek an in-kind contribution of land from the township that we could use for the development of phase 2 of Calplex. So phase 1, the district purchased about 20 acres and we developed that land. CYSA, they have been working to incrementally over time continue to make improvements and maintain that space. The township also purchased some land but haven't had the opportunity to develop that yet. And so we would be asking for them to develop or allow us to develop it, because in order to use district taxpayer funds on it, we must be the owners of that site. The other thing we would do is seek just a recommitment with Cal Youth Sports Association for maintaining the facility, because this would be an increase. So we don't want to increase the what we would have to do from a district perspective to maintain it. As I mentioned, we are challenged with our own 320 acres. And I did meet with the board recently just to make them aware of this request, so that if we were to, or if the board see fit with this or any of the other supplemental items, in those two areas, we would have to work with the township, work with Cal Youth Sports to make that work. So that would be somewhat of a partnership opportunity there. The other thing I wanted to just quickly bring up, because we like to spend more time on some of these items. And just in general, and I was at a presentation last week, and was just happened to be there, and PFM was presenting. It's a financial advisor firm that we use frequently whenever we're looking at bond issues. And they were talking about the challenges and the number of districts that are going out this May, and the large size of some of the bonds they're seeing. And just like we had communicated to the board before, because we saw about a 42% increase in the construction pricing world, many districts are going out, and they started to talk about what it takes to run a bond successfully. What struck me is they gave 3 different examples of when you go out. If you go out in May, if you go out later in August, or if you go out in November. And so they identified about an 18-month run-up, about 4 months for district assessments, then another 7 to 8 months for the bond team to really focus in on and narrow in on the numbers and the scope of the work, so that you can have a tight, cohesive package to take to Treasury. Getting that process through Treasury is generally about a 3 to 4 month period. The reason why I'm bringing that up is we knew and we did communicate that it would be a challenge to put it on for a spring election, but we feel like we would be up to the challenge. And because we knew that some of the projects were things that we had looked at originally, and we knew we had the capacity to do it, we pulled things back because the board had expressed a desire at that time to keep the total bond below a certain amount. So we had some idea of things that we would like to do in a bond, but they just kind of sat on a shelf. So that's how we were able to relatively quickly pull together a list of things that we see in the next 5 to 7 years that's going to have to be tackled one way or the other. So if it's not through a bond, it's going to have to come through the general fund, which is going to be greatly squeezed. The next piece that we have found, and Sarah may help me here, but she was working with our law firm as well as the bond team and the Michigan Department of Treasury. So the first step is we had to get a meeting date with Treasury. So our deadline for the preliminary application is November 17th, which is basically next week. We have a meeting with Treasury on November 22nd. If all goes well, we'll have to come back to the board during the regular board meeting for a preliminary approval application. And then the second phase is in January. The board would then have to adopt a resolution calling for the election. We did see, because we know we're getting ready to have a board changeover, if we could move up that date or move everything back so that one board could deal with it. Unfortunately, we can't move it back and stay within our time frame. And we can't move the January meeting up because Treasury, as well as our law firm, said they're not going to be able to turn around the appropriate documents and take care of these steps any faster than what we have listed. So that puts us on a pretty aggressive timeline, but still a doable timeline. So that was a lot of information, and that is the last slide. And I want to turn it over to questions.
I know there's questions, so who wants to start? Tim?
Yeah, so to give the board a little bigger picture overview, could we go back and assess the original community center dollar amount? I got to talk into the side of the microphone. Difficult. The original community center dollar amount, and then how much we're over budget on that right now?
So the original community center dollar amount, and I don't know if Sarah or Matt can look that up, but I think we had 24 million. And then we found out to have our space, YMCA space, our pool space, And our community center space, we needed to add about 10,000 square feet. And we saw price escalations and some additional requests from township. So we cut back where we could, but we had to move that from 24 million to a little bit above 30 million. So it was about a $6 million increase.
Okay, and then for the Dutton, the original bond number was,
About 21 million, and that grew to just over 30 million.
and how much did we bond for total originally?
88 million.
So how do we add the 24 million and the 21 million? How are we getting that number?
I'm not sure I follow you.
Well, you said the original bond for the community center was 24 million, but we had to increase it to 30 million.
Yes.
The original Dutton was 21 million, that's 61 million, or I'm sorry, 51 million. Then we had extra projects, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of other projects.
And what was that original budget amount for the original bond projects?
The original budget amount for all of the projects was 88.2 million.
Okay.
They can't hear you. You have to have your
Yeah.
microphone in.
So basically 51 million. I can't do math either. 45 million for the for the two. buildings.
Originally, yes.
Right, and then the rest were just various projects.
Yes.
So I think it's important to separate what we put on our list and promise the community we were going to do versus what we'd like to do beyond that. I think that's an important point to establish. So if we can learn a little more about that, that would help me with my decision anyway.
So are you asking, like, based on the presentation we've just seen, if any of these items aside from Dutton were part of that original?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So what was part of that original is New Dutton Stadium renovation. One of the things that we had to was there anything else that was part of the original? New Dutton and the stadium renovation.
Part of Calplex too, Dr. Martin?
Yes, part of Calplex. I'm sorry, thanks for that correction. We were going to add an additional field for Calplex and technology needs.
Was any of the Duncan Lake renovations in here, like the cafeteria upgrade, was that potential from the old, or no? Okay.
No.
I do believe that the demolition was included in the original budget for Dutton.
I'd have to go back and double check that, but I don't think it was. We felt like we had enough contingency and could probably handle it, but I don't think it was originally put in that bond package.
Okay.
And unless you recall something different from the meetings we were in?
I recall us talking about it in bond committee, but I was assuming that we had the dollars if we were talking about it, so. I understand we burned through a lot of contingency and are finding ourselves in a spot where inflation is just, and wage increases and supply chain issues is really crushing us, but I'm trying to establish the list of what we promise the community versus what we'd like to do beyond that, so we can separate the discussion a little bit, just for context.
So if I go back, and if I'm looking at this list, what was promised was the New Dutton, the stadium renovation, and then Calplex adding additional play space there.
So essentially, that's the 49.5 million,
Yes.
correct, is what we're looking at, out of the 61 that we're talking about, at least on here.
Yep.
Okay. Additional, go ahead.
We didn't have buses or technology on the other one either.
We didn't. So if you recall, when we first started talking about a bond back in 2019, I think the original list that came out was around either 96 or 98 million. After conversations with the board, it was expressed that maybe we should try to keep that number below 90 million. One board member indicated maybe we should go much higher and take care of all those needs at once. So listening to that at that time, we started to take some things out, and the hope was in starting early, we were off to a good start, and we got, I don't know how much it was, $15 million worth of work in the first summer. But as the prices continue to escalate, things that we thought, well, maybe we'll have a little contingency here, a little extra there, and we can pick up some of these projects, was just not to be.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, this is more of a comment, I guess, than a question. So if we, following up on what Tim's saying, if we look at the extra pieces to this, I think we've had a history of being fiscally conservative, which has been great. It served us well. Operating wise, it helped us during COVID. Look at these areas that we're talking about. There's nothing really in there to me when we talk about the new items that are flashy, right? There's nothing in here that's, oh wow, we're talking about roofs, we're talking about parking lots, things that need to get done. And we walk a fine line, and I always struggle with this personally, making sure that we're being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, but also we can't get to a point where we have subpar facilities, and these are issues that are going to need to get addressed at some point. So I feel comfortable in the fact that when we have $120 million, I think most districts would probably bond for the full shot. I think that's a pretty standard practice. We haven't gone that route. So to stay $60 million or so under what we're able to do, I think is still being good stewards of the community's money while addressing needs that are important and have long-term implications. The other thing I like is, to be honest, we got to get this vote passed for a multitude of reasons, but one of which is most important is getting Dutton through. I think we all agree on that. That's in a bad spot. It's got to get moved. We need to make sure that it gets built. This touches a lot of different things that affect a whole bunch of different people, between band, youth sports, varsity sports, different elementary schools. I think it's touching a lot of the community, which I also like, because it's when it's impacting you personally, you can get that motivation to come out and vote. But I just don't see anything, I guess, to me, that's egregious in here where I would say, geez, do we really need to do this? I mean, we do have to keep up with other schools. And, going to the Rockford football game, for any of you that were there, that was pretty abundantly clear we're behind, right, on some of the stuff. So I'm all in favor of this. I guess I'm happy. I'm happy that we're trying to take the steps to advance the school district from a facility perspective. I think we have amazing staff, amazing kids, amazing families. This needs to get caught up.
Thank you. Brittany, did you have questions? Anything you'd like to share?
No, ditto.
Okay, thank you.
Way to go, Kyle.
Jason?
Of course I do. I do. So, one, I agree. All of these things I think need to be done, but we really need to, as Kyle said as well, make sure Dutton gets done. So, in talking to a couple of people in the community, there were some concerns about, are we doing too much extra? So I guess the concern that I would have, if we do these, does some of these things give somebody a reason to vote no? Like, we already gave you $88 million to do these things, you didn't. Why do you want more money? Again, that's one. Another one that somebody brought up to me too is, does it make sense to do all of these things during the inflationary period? Like, should we maybe do Dutton because we said we were going to and we need to, and then hold off on some of these others when we have a handle on what inflation might slow down or reverse or whatever, or when I don't know. or when the labor shortages, get better. I don't know. These are concerns that I've heard, and I just wanted to make sure that I brought them to the board. And then the concern that I have as a board member, as we talk about this, is if we're talking about a normal 18-month process to get these things through, right? These new things haven't gone through that. Dutton did, because we had that on the original, so we were much further along in the planning for that. I think you could even include the stadium renovation because that was part of the original plan. That we were much further along in terms of what we wanted and what we should put on a bond for. So that's I don't know if concern is the right word, but just that's just my thinking. Like, are we going too fast on some of these other things, and are we going to miss? And I really don't want to get us into a spot where we do with this bond what we had to do in the first one, which is, oh crap, we got to the end and now we got to cut 6 things off of that right side of that list. And, have a portion of the community come back and say, wait, you said you were going to do these things twice now, and you're not. So, bottom line, I will support and 120% behind whatever direction we go for a bond and get it passed. I just thought I wanted to share those concerns, at least with the board, so.
On a note to the planning portion of that you asked about, these items, everything on that list actually has existed in one form or another. The original bond list and future bond list and my 20-year plan has seen a lot of these developed pretty significantly for the future. It's an opportunity to bring them back, to the list and to the forefront and get ahead of them before they fail. Need to take care of them. We don't have an opportunity.
Yeah, and so if I can maybe add or put it in context, I know when I first got here and during the strategic planning process and just interviewing for the job, there was a lot of concern about the poor condition of our grounds and our fields. There was a lot of concerns about deferred maintenance. If you recall, and this was actually a little bit before you got on the board, but we had a very tough negotiation year in my second year, and we created the Public Improvement Fund because we identified over about $5 million worth of needs beyond that particular bond. And so we created a space and moved some money from our fund balance to try to tackle as many of those projects as we could. We even had a group who wanted to litigate about us not taking care of the girls' softball field as compared to the boys' baseball field. So there were so many things that, because it wasn't put in the original bond and because we were seeing a very stretched general fund, we were heading to a crisis point. And so what I asked the tech department to do, the transportation department, as well as the operations, is to put reoccurring 5-year capital needs projections in place so that we could determine what big expense we need to take care of and how we would do that out of general fund. And if there was a bond, look at that. So we have had an ongoing list. We did have to take, to get from below 90 million when we put the first bond out there. We did take $8 to $10 million worth of things back in that time with those dollars off the table. Because the board wanted to be fiscally conservative, and we've done that. I think this is a similar fiscally conservative approach in the fact that we're leaving more than 50% still on the table. But whether the board choose to do these items, take all items off, add to, with the exception of the band storage, we're going to have to pay for every single one of those things at some point within the next 5 to 7 years anyway. And the only thing that we would have to do that with, if we choose not to use it in here, and I'm fine with that, but that will come out of the general fund, which is the same one that when we talk about staffing, salaries, benefits, when we talk about other maintenance items, or if we're talking about instructional programming. All of that list will then start competing for that same pot of money. And that's the one thing that I think, and I've heard the concerns over and over. Like in my mind, it's much cleaner and easier for us to say we're just going after a new Dutton, because I want to make it very clear that is priority number one for me. With that being said, I think I've seen and heard enough concern that would we generate enough support for that? And I don't want to leave that as a chance. I am very sensitive to the number. We've worked really hard to try to make sure it's not an overreach, because if I can be quite honest, there's about 3 boilers that I know we're going to have to deal with in the next couple years. And that's going to be somewhere in the $300,000 to $500,000 a pop. That's where we'll use our public improvement fund. But we try to be sensible in this number, realizing that we had originally took 8 to 10 million off because we wanted to meet the board's request to keep it under a certain number. We just felt like if we're going to go down this path, this might be a good time, and it touched a broad swath of things that need to occur or will need to occur in our district, as well as other groups beyond just Dutton. So that was the thinking.
I appreciate that, and I'm just to be clear, I'm not saying that none of that is not important. I think it's all important and stuff that we should look to do. I think, I don't even know if I think this, but it's something worth maybe talking out loud or saying out loud. Do we push forward with a Dutton only and then spend the 18 months putting this list together and do another bond in 18 months, 2 years, or whatever that is. And again, I don't know that I'm even for that, because I see Julie's face over there, and I might make that same face if somebody else was saying that, but I just, again, priority number one has to be, in my mind, getting Dutton done and done right. And, yes, we need to do all of these things regardless. We're going to have to do the parking lot. Scotland Yard turf's going to need to be replaced. We want stadium renovation. Just want to make sure we hit the Dutton thing and get that absolutely 100% passed, and then whatever else we get is fantastic.
Julie, did you?
I agree. And I really agree with both of you. So I've been on the board for 6 years, but I've raised 3 kids here. And when my oldest, who's now a real human person with a real job out in the world, when she was in kindergarten, I would go to the football games, and people were like, why don't we have turf? When she was in kindergarten, she's out in the world right now. And same with Calplex. She played ASO at Calplex, and when is this going to get finished? And so I really like the aspect of complete the vision, because it does feel like some of these things have been out there for years, like generations of children. And we keep talking about it, and it does seem to always be the thing that drops off on the bonds. And so the fact that we are taking these things that sometimes are the first things to go, like Jason said, because typically, unfortunately, with any bond, there's always some things that we would have loved to have done, but it drops off. So these seem to be the things that would always drop off. And I don't know, I just think it's not incredibly flashy or crazy or really out of the box here. It's get done and complete the vision on things that we've been talking about since, 1990s babies. So I totally agree. I think that number one is Dutton, and then the other projects are things that we're going to have to do anyway. And completing the vision is something I fully support.
Tim?
So if we're planning for maintenance assets like buses and technology, I don't know why we would change our policy on paying for these items over decades versus working that into our general fund where it's a better policy because we're not spending 200 and whatever dollars per laptop and amortizing it over 20 some years. I think in looking at this, I'm more comfortable with a $56 million number versus 61. We have to keep in mind too that home values are starting to fall. Families could use a break in their taxes, and although you're right, this does not increase taxes, it certainly doesn't lower taxes. And we got to be careful what our bond threshold is too, because if we dip below, and I don't even know the answer to this, but it seems like if we dip below our bonding level in community asset value, we may run into some trouble there with our credit rating.
So one thing I want to make sure that I'm correct, that I correct for the record. We don't have a policy that prohibit any of this. When I came, I introduced a philosophy that I don't believe in using bond funds for laptops and computers, and that's not what we're proposing. We're talking the other infrastructure things that are larger ticket items. We will continue to fund laptops and computers in our general fund budget. But there's no actual policy, but I do believe in that philosophy. I also extend that to school buses. But in this particular case, and because of some of the fiscal challenges that I know a while ago you were very concerned about our budget and what reductions we're going to have to make to staffing, I see this as a golden opportunity to reduce the risk of deeper layoffs to staffing if we're going to go after a bond. And the district has a long history of putting buses in the bond. So part of that is as you had brought up before, with concerns with our general fund budget, I agree with you on that. And so I'm looking at that and saying, maybe we go back to something that the district has done for an extended period of time and we revisit that for a short period of time. Again, if the board choose not to do it, it's fine with me. It's numbers on a page. We'll figure it out. But with those previous expressed concerns, I really would just want to advise the board that, in the best case scenario, things will be okay. In the worst case scenario, we know ESSER funds will go away. We could see some challenges where some of those things would help you because, again, we're always, I think when I got here, our average fleet age was, close to 15 years, and 16 years, and we've brought that down considerably with a philosophy of making sure that we created a space in our general fund to try to fund 3 new buses a year. Right now, what we put away for 3 new buses pay for about 2 1/4 buses just because of inflation. And if we run into some future budget issues, we're going to see that number escalate and we're going to lose the ground that we have made in the last 5 years. So again, I'm totally okay with whatever the board wants to pull out for whatever reason. I just wanted to kind of explain or make it clear that we don't have a policy prohibiting it. We have a philosophy. We're sticking true to that with technology. But the buses is the one that I will own and say that I'm probably would suggest in this case to revisit what we used to do and do it again.
So I think, I'm sorry, Brittany, you go.
No, actually, I was just going to ask a question. You proposed a number of 56 million. I'm curious if there are specific things that you would propose taking out.
Well, I kind of touched on, I think buses are a big one for me.
Okay.
And if the technology is more of a higher ticket, longer longevity, we're getting 15 years out of what we're buying, then I can see where that makes more sense.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is if we're going to move forward, we want to be successful. And does this, to Jason's point, do we run the risk of not having this pass because there's even the perception that we're not doing what we promise we're doing beyond that? I know we need to maintain our assets. It's essential, but we also need to be able to recognize that in inflation, we might need to tighten up on some things. So I think it is going to be a balance between taxpayer investment in the assets and also showing our fiscal responsibility in inflation and tightening up on operating expenses.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, and I agree with that. I think the challenge right now that we're facing and that I hear us all kind of wrestling with is we know that building and finishing the new Dutton is by far number one highest priority for I think everybody here today. And I also think, and probably completing the rest of the vision, the original vision too. I also think that right now we're wrestling with the fact that we don't have like a magic ball, right, to like predict the future, to know are we going to be able to be more successful with Dutton on its own, right, like requesting a new bond for Dutton on its own, or are we going to be more successful with adding these other, other things in and potentially bringing in other invested groups of citizens throughout the community? And I don't know the answer to that either because I did leave my crystal ball at home tonight, so I'm sorry about that. But I don't know exactly how we predict that, much like Jason said, without doing a little bit of research on it, you know what I mean, and trying to figure that out. But I agree, like if we move forward with the current timeline, there's not time for that. So I respect that too, and I do continue to back up what I said before, which is that I agree these things are, by and large, like you said, these are things that have been on the list. These are things that are reasonable and that are going to need to happen at some point, no matter what. So I think that's part of my reasoning when I say I do support that vision ongoing. I think that's part of why, even though we can't predict for sure how that's going to go.
Can I ask just two quick clarifying questions, please?
Yes.
So Tim had mentioned something about, maybe we want our families to have a tax break. My understanding is if this doesn't pass, it's not like an immediate tax break, right? It'd be like a tax break
Not for
20
a
or
long
30
time.
years from now or something, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then two, if we put the buses on here and our general fund or our budget gets better over the next 18 months, because it's on here, do we have to commit to purchasing those buses out of the bond funds, or can we shift that 1.6 million to something else because our general fund situation is better and we don't see the need 18 months from now to do so?
If you were to switch it to something else, it would have to be to something else related in the bond package.
Dr. Martin, I just want to piggyback on it because we're on the same wavelength there. Is it possible to prepay on the bond? So let's say to Jason's point, right, kind of using the same philosophy, things are working well, we have money in there. Are we allowed to prepay on that bond, that 1.6 back?
I don't know. I've never heard
I know
of
that
it, so
people would
I'd
normally
have
do
to
that, but-
research. Yeah, I'd have to research that. That I don't know. Sarah, are you?
I'm not sure if I follow the question.
I think what he's saying is if we have the money and we haven't used it, can we prepay back into it rather than have the money or designate it
Well,
something else?
even if you spent it, let's say we spend it on the buses, right?
Right.
But as time goes by over the next 5 years, we start to build up a little bit of a surplus because we have additional cash that's coming in. Are we allowed to make additional prepayments onto a bond?
Like, can you pay out of
Pay
your
it back early.
general fund back into that bond that you've already taken?
No. So what you would do if you do not spend the entire bond issue, then that has to go back to this, like there's,
He's saying spend it, but like
Correct.
for your mortgage, right? Hey, I got a nice bonus check from work. I want to pay down my mortgage. Can we pay down the bond with a general fund?
no, you can, it's all structured with set schedules of payments. It's not like in a mortgage where you can prepay on the principal and.
I haven't heard that either. I mean, we'll double check, and if we hear different, we'll put it in the memo. I haven't heard that being done because it is a very unique process, I guess.
It seems like we checked into this once before and that was a no, but we could be wrong too. I guess I'm gonna maybe put Mr. Veach on the spot. You wanna come up to the microphone? I don't, this is not gonna be a quiz, there's no test here.
If there is Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, right?
I know, and I know you'd be willing to do so. So I guess I really just want to have this little heartfelt conversation moment with you. I guess I want to know, I want you to give us some input as to how you feel, what you think from your staff, what maybe you feel from your families, the community that's around you. How can we want to best serve you. This is important to us. We want to get this through. I know we've had conversations too about, your feelings about how this might work. So if you could just give us a little bit of feedback from your end.
Yeah, well, I'd like to first just start off by thanking the board, because you could have easily just said, you know what, the funds aren't there and Dutton's not going to move forward. So even to pursue and to continue, I like the phrase up there, to complete the vision. I sincerely appreciate that. And I'd also like to thank all the school board. I'm going to guess, I've never sat in your seat, but I'm going to guess it could be a thankless job at times. So thank you, though, to Kyle, and thank you to Julie for your years of service. Really appreciate all that you guys have done for the community. Tim, welcome back aboard. Appreciate all that you've done, and just to the school board in general. For Dutton, my little lambs, we have the highest socioeconomic, population with the highest need in general, with the highest free and reduced lunch population. Is our building okay? Well, I'll tell you, when I was a wrestling coach, the first thing I did was got rid of all the fancy singlets and the fancy attire. I said, you know what? I want people to come and watch you for who you are and the wrestling moves that you have. Well, I've had the same kind of philosophy at Dutton Elementary. I want our people, our teachers, our staff to be the reason that our kids come in our academic performance and our academic achievement. And I think that we have proven that. We have a proven track record of excellence at Dutton. Now, what breaks my heart is when I go up and down the halls when it's super hot and I see my kids' faces all red and blotchy, and we're handing out popsicles and doing the best that we can. When we're trying to have interventions for our kids, some of our highest need population, and it's outside the cafeteria where it's pretty noisy, and we're doing the best that we can to keep the students engaged. We don't have any other place to put them in any other breakout rooms. We don't have storage, so our stage is all filled with storage now. We have roof leaks and whatnot. I know other places and whatnot do as well. When I look big picture for the next 60 years, approximately, when you're thinking about a new school, and I look at the location that Dutton's at and how industrialized it's become. I just got off the phone this week with Kent County Police Department, which I do every single year before the snow starts to fly. I need your police out there, because those trucks, and I know they got places to go and people to see and whatnot too, but they're flying. And I want the safety for our kids, for our families, when they're backed up on 68th Street. It's dangerous. So when I look for the big picture, I do sincerely believe, that Dutton needs to be in a new location. Not for necessarily even the fanciness of a new building, but for what my kids, some of my most medically fragile students in the district, for what they deserve. And so that's what I really want it for. And when I look at the big picture of our community and what the school board has done, I do feel like we've been very fiscally wise. When we could have taken $120 million out on the original bond and we went to $88 million, there were things that we did not foresee. And I can see how some people are saying, you know what, let's just stick with Dutton. That's the main ticket item, and just have that on the bond. I understand that philosophy. But I also understand that, just reading in the Wood TV about how attendance rates are low for schools. If we don't keep up and keep our facilities looking nice, what are we going to do to continue to draw for the destination district that we are here in Caledonia? So when I look at this amount, I had no idea we'd be able to bond capacity of 125 million, but to even see 61, 56, whatever it may be, we're still in a solid financial place. It's not, when I look at this list, that, we can go up to 125 million, let's ask the community for all these frivolous things. I look at those, even the facility reinvestments, that if it doesn't come out of a bond, and it does have to come out of general ed funds, when 85% approximately is to staffing, when we have to start reducing staffing, that really affects my little lambs. And so anything that we can do, I know it's hard as you do extend, a bus, do you really want to pay for it for 30 years or however 25 years? That is a tough decision. But we're in kind of an unforeseen future right now. And so when I look at this, I do believe that the more fingerlings that you touch really helps the motivation for people to come out and vote yes. When it's just Dutton, I believe just hearing from people and seeing head nods and hearing you guys, people do want Dutton. And so I've had a phrase, unite for one, united for all. Dutton seems to be the big ticket item that we want to unite for, but really we want to unite for all of Caledonia, to keep all of our district moving forward. And so when I see that 60 million and I know that there's over half that's still out there, in my mind, that's financially smart. We still are giving ourselves bonding capacity that if we do need to do something in the future, there is money there. And so my staff, were they hurt? Yeah, they were really looking forward to it. Were my kids even hurt? A couple of them said, hey, Mr. Veach, are we not going to get a new school? I say, hey, we'll keep fighting. We'll keep working for it. Do they love us? Do they trust us? Will they support us no matter what? Absolutely, they will. But when I look at the right decision to move Caledonia Community Schools forward and Dutton Elementary, I like the vision of where this is going.
I appreciate you being here, and I do appreciate how hard that conversation was with your staff as I sat there and listened to you that day. We do want to do the right thing, and these conversations are hard, and putting Dutton in the position we are is not what any of us want to see. So we appreciate your support. We appreciate the fact that you are willing to get in the trenches with us to really work on how do we get this through, to complete the vision, and whatever that may be, to whatever extent. Is there any questions that anybody would like to ask of Dr. Martin or Mr. Veach?
I don't have a question for Mr. Veach. I appreciate everything you do. You're an excellent administrator, and we're blessed to have you. My question is, for the demolition, should we consider maybe selling that outright to, or not guess that it's not going to be of value to, say, an adopt foster care home or something like that, to where instead of spending money, and I think you might want that, to have it be reused for a higher purpose versus spending $750,000 on blowing it up for a clean land sale. So just something to think about.
We certainly have options to continue to discuss that as well. Kyle?
Just ditto what Tim said. Obviously, thanks for everything you do. To follow up, I was already feeling this way and confident, but I can tell you that the people that would be affected the most, if that's what you want to, that makes me feel even better, because if we're in it together, going in the same direction, I'd feel worse if you said you wanted to just do Dutton, right? Because then if it doesn't work, then I'd feel horrible, right? So at least we're all feeling the same way, right? Put a little bit on you too, but I mean, it does make me feel better that you're there, you're on the ground there. We all have our circles of people that we talk to, but obviously you're on the ground level there. So I really appreciate you talking.
I just look at that word motivation. When it comes to vote day, the more people that you can get motivated to get out and vote, I think the better the result will be.
Mr. Hess has something for us, just in case. Go ahead.
I just wanted to circle back to the beginning of the conversation and the math, and it was going through my head, and I wanted to share, for the audience's benefit as well, and for the board to remember that, yes, if you look at the costs that we've incurred so far out of the $88 million bond, it doesn't add up to $88 million. While there was not enough left to pay for Dutton, there was a significant list of projects that was remaining open on the list. And that's what the board directed us last time to complete. So we do have some money available to us, and we have a list of 15 headings that we're moving forward on from the 2020 bond, and we're continuing to work and we're continuing to get stuff done. It was on the original list. So just kind of circle back to say, okay, we're missing 15 million. Where'd it go? Okay, it's there, and it is continuing in the 2020 bond.
Correct. Got it.
So part of this situation that we find ourselves in is because of inflation. Are we beefing this up with enough contingency to finish this finally over at some period of time, rather than coming back and saying we can't finish it because inflation is now 25%?
I built some significant inflationary numbers into my spreadsheet looking at the next 20 years. Each year has a multiplier in it. So when I was pulling the numbers for some of these projects that we were talking about and planning at, I was using numbers that had definitely seen annual increases. So we can only obviously say as of May 2023, so I can't give you a number that's 5 years down the road, but yes, a number of these do have responsible contingencies built into my numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, like, halftime speech. I'm ready to go, like, run through a brick wall now to get this thing passed, so I appreciate that. So I just want to just circle back a bit to sort of like the buses and the technology. So again, if we come back and we decide we don't want to buy buses, we got to reapply that to what's in the bond. Are we able to craft bond language a bit more generic? So instead of like Paris Ridge Playground, right, it's elementary playground, so that if we didn't spend the 1.6 million on buses, right, then okay, we could throw a couple $100,000 at another playground or whatever, or some of these other things to at least have the option, so that again, if the general fund does turn out to be better over the next 18 months or 2 years, then we don't lock ourselves into having to spend bond money for a bus, for example.
So yes, we do try to make it generic enough that gives us some flexibility. So for example, in a great bond project, and you didn't have many change orders, you didn't have many issues, you could find yourself with some additional money from contingencies and other things at the end. And if you wrote it broad enough, there might be some other things, such as, playground improvements or replacement, Paris Ridge, and other elementary buildings. So then, if you found yourself, hey, I got an extra $150,000, now you can take that and apply that to something. You still have to stay within that world of that bond language, so it takes a little bit of time to craft it the right way. But the answer is yes.
Sorry, I'm talking too much. But just last comment on the busing situation. I think I would like to see this not be a practice ongoing. I don't think it's something that we should do, to Tim's point, that to take a highly depreciated asset and bond for it. I don't think typically makes sense. But to Mr. Veach's point, I think this is a unique time. We have to be able to retain and attract staff. We all know that. We have to keep the group that we have happy and also keep people coming in. So as a one-off, I'm okay with it, but I would like to see this not be a regular thing. I would like to get back to the practice as soon as possible to not try to bond for busing.
Yeah, and as I told Trustee Morris, I agree. I think prior to my arrival, you guys were using this practice, and it's not one that I love myself. But I do recall a couple months ago, we were all cringing when we were looking at the current budget and what will happen after the ESSER funds go away. And we put a lot of supports in place, and we saw the academic outcome from these supports and things that we've done. But at the same token, there's that concern of how do we beat the budget, so to speak. So we're doing some things now to get our budget in place. I'd rather be safe than sorry, because I think, as Trustee Morris, there's concern from a lot of people that we might be heading into some tough financial times with the economy. So if that hits us and we don't have this, we still have an old fleet of buses. So we're still going to have that problem, and we're going to have to take it on deep reductions to staffing or deep reductions to fine and performing arts supports and programs or athletics. And so I think this is, I couldn't agree with you two more, that I don't love this idea, but I think in this case, I would return to what we had done previously, just for this 3 to 5 year stretch. And then I think the wise practice would be to build it into your regular general fund like we have done for the last 5 years.
Thank you. I think Dr. Martin and our administrative team as a whole, Mr. Vries as well, they have done an incredible job of writing our budget putting things in line items, getting us in the right space. I do appreciate, the situation we're in being, I don't want to say unique, but certainly walking a road that, we don't know what we're going to be faced with. But I appreciate the vision of looking into that next, this space of what we're going to be looking at, because I also don't love the idea of going out to complete the smaller vision for Dutton and turning around and going back in 2 years later and saying, okay, and now we need this. And so, I'd rather look at the whole picture. I too, Dutton is our priority. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your passion. Nobody brings more passion to something than Mr. Veach does, we all know. And so, we look forward to you working with, us working with you, you working with us on this to figure out a way to get this through. So are we in a space where we feel comfortable moving forward with this the way it is? I mean, as comfortable as we can be. I realize this isn't perfect, and we're not going to have a perfect answer to all of this, but, as a whole, as a consensus, yes and yes, yes. Okay. All right. Okay, I think that's the answer to all of that. So we will continue to look for more updates to come. Any language that we can put in the bond that gives us the flexibility, whether it's the buses or the technology piece, the playground piece, whatever those may look like. If we can keep that all in perspective, that would be great, and thank you.
One more, I just would like to hear it from the man himself. Did you get what you need out of this meeting before we leave? I don't want to leave with any question.
Yes,
Okay.
we have a very tight window to get the stuff moving and still tend to the day-to-day, but we have what we need to move forward. So thank you to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you to you all.
Thank you, yeah, absolutely, to all of you. So I do have Mr. Veach on top. Did you want 3 minutes again, now that I already asked you for, all your...
I'm good. I just appreciate all that you guys do each and every day. I appreciate this vision moving forward, and yes, I am ready and willing to support in any way I possibly can.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to read off names in order so that we can move forward. I have first Kylie, second I have Dave, and then I have Leah. We do have a timer.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Okay, so first I did want to start with another thank you. A big thank you to the school board and everyone for all the work. An extra big thank you because I know it's a difficult time and all the difficult decisions, but the thank you of over the last couple of meetings and over the last couple of years for the transparency, the discussions, and what I really feel was like listening to the community. The messages that I've been hearing in the community and at the last couple of meetings was tough decisions being made, but there was a lot of little projects and items if we didn't move forward with probably weren't ever going to get to be completed. So thank you for Cal Pride, right? As what I hear is I feel we've got a great community. Now we need to up our facilities to match with everyone else. And I think the vision is getting there. Because I too am a little afraid if we don't and we don't keep it up, that we might continue to see this growth and the pool of students and athletes and everyone we have right now maybe move away and change. So I'm glad to hear this because it reinforces in me that I think everyone kind of sees it on the same page. I think a message is we need to compete, and to do that, our facilities, they need to step up. And so I appreciate the vision. On top of that, being someone and seeing the money, the fiscal responsibility, I also want to be, if you're going to spend money on something, I'm excited to see the things about the maintaining. Because if we don't put money in there and we just build it and we don't maintain it, I always look at it as a kind of inappropriate use of money because it's going to cost us longer in the long run. So I think it's an important part to see in there. And also to see that it's not, as we said, getting voters there, just Dutton or just one thing, because it's going to be harder to get everyone to show up and vote if they feel like it doesn't affect them. So finishing the facilities, the athletics, putting some other things in for playgrounds and things that I needed, I think are going to be important in getting everyone to show up. And that message is we're trying to get people there and polling and voting. I wanted to echo about the fund and hearing with the ERISA funds and things that might, I probably said it wrong, ESRA, whatever, funds that might expire. We've done a great job of beefing up our academic stuff, our needs, our scores, our mental health, our safety. And knowing that those funds might expire, if we didn't put some things there too, I too would be afraid that we'd have to start pulling from funds to continue those to support. And I don't want to see those things we've done go away either because we need that money now for facilities or other things. So it's something I think we've done a great job at. I think the environment has helped us with, and I hope those things get to continue as well. The education, the mental health, and the facilities all together. One of the comments I had, which Jason I think touched on, if we can be general, I was a little concerned with the playground, just seeing one on there. I would like it to see for all, because if we have a new school and we're fixing one, what about the other schools? There are some that have things that are not ADA compliant, that are in bad shape. So if we can keep things to make sure we're touching all of them, I think a lot of people would appreciate that. And the last thing was just on the athletic stuff, I know we had about everything in there. I just wasn't sure if speakers were in there and sound system, because I heard that from a lot in the community, and I think I saw everything else on there. So I just wanted to make sure we had that as a line item or consideration.
Our AD is working on that.
Great. Again, thank you very much. I appreciate it and all the tough decisions and all that you guys have been doing.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Dave, followed by Leah.
My name is Dave Tietzma. I'm the president of Caledonia Youth Sports Association. I've heard our name mentioned just once or twice tonight. Thank you for that. First of all, I'd like to thank Caledonia Community Schools and this current board for the longstanding tradition of being the sole benefactor for the kids in our community and youth sports. If it were not for Caledonia Community Schools, there would be no youth sports in our community. Incidentally, phase one of Calplex is now 13 seasons old. And back in the day when we were agitating and motivating and pleading and looking for capital campaigns and everything else at the time, there were some naysayers then too. And I have to say that over the 13 years, we have received tremendous positive feedback from many other members of other communities who have come to our community and spent time at Calplex. And they said what a wonderful treasure it is. Many of those communities wish they had a Calplex. So it reflects very well on our community. And I think those few naysayers who were against it at the time, no one knows who they are anymore. And no one hears from them. And we're all, I think, about 100% in our community now very thankful for that little jewel that we have there. Incidentally, when the 2007 bond was passed, it was right before to procure the land and to build it out. We had a recession right after that. And it became very convenient that costs went down at that time. Who's to say another year or two costs don't go down again if we have the recession that's planned or projected. The extra money that was left over from that allocation in 2007 ended up paving the parking lot and putting up a concessions and restroom building so we don't have porta-johns out there at Calplex, for which many mothers and children are very happy. On behalf of CYSA's 1,200 plus or so families that are involved with youth sports here that utilize Calplex, I'd like to say that we're all behind this effort. We very much appreciate it. We have been working for many years to get phase two completed, to take that land that the township acquired and didn't seem to have a lot of interest in developing, unfortunately. And we're very appreciative of your consideration of that at this time. As a resident of this community for the last 29 years, I have to say my children did not go to Caledonia Community Schools. However, I can tell you my children benefited greatly from Caledonia Community Schools, and I am glad to, I'm not glad to get that tax bill twice a year, but I sure am glad to pay for the portions that go to Caledonia Community Schools, because I have witnessed firsthand on behalf of myself, on behalf of all of the families who have gone through and utilized Calplex and the other school properties that support youth play space, there's been tremendous benefit. And I think after this COVID period we've hopefully come out of finally and don't go back into, I think the need for youth play space and the opportunities for socialization and so forth that takes place at these facilities around all of our school campuses is very important and very much needed. We need that sense of normalcy back. So we are a destination community. Growth cannot be prevented, but it can be thoughtfully planned for and managed with the timeline projections that we see. There will be more people coming to Caledonia. Calplex came along at just the right time, back in the late aughts, and opened up in 2011. We are now reaching the point again where we are reaching capacity of youth play space. And as we've seen all the housing starts and everything come around once again, we are still that destination community, and this is needed. And thankfully, this time, I think we have the opportunity to provide that supplemental play space before it's long past due. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Leah?
Okay, I just had some thoughts that I wanted to share while I listened, and hopefully I can keep them organized. I agree with what Kyle said in the beginning. A lot of, like, the list, it's not showy. It's stuff that has to be done. A lot of you agree that. I completely agree it has to be done. I loved hearing from the principal from Dutton and having his support. I think that that was really great for you guys to bring him up here. And you have my support, and I'll fight for whatever you guys decide. Like, but I am personally a fan of what you have on that list. With all that being said, I also agree with what Jason was saying about some of the concerns, because that was initially like my concern sitting here is, oh my gosh, like people are gonna see all this added stuff. And look at who we have come to this meetings. It's such a small fraction of people, so they don't know all the details. And what they hear is, when you did the last vote, they hear like, oh, we're going to get everything done except for Dutton, and we're going to go out for this bond for Dutton. And now all of a sudden they're going to see, oh, we're going for Dutton plus all this extra stuff. And they're not going to have all these details from this meeting, and they're not going to get on and read the stuff that you put on the website. They're just going to hear those simple facts. Like, the majority of the people won't. So I think you just need to have a plan for how to address that, because I am concerned that that's going to hurt the voting for this bond. And like I said, I'm going to support and push no matter what, but I think you guys need to have a plan for how we're going to address that in the community, because you have a huge population that isn't here getting this information. And one of the other things that I thought would be interesting, I know Tim talked about, like, you know, just the stuff that was on there. A number, it could help, it might not help, but I thought it'd be interesting to hear what's the difference in years that you would be paying for that 56 million versus the 61 million. Like, if it's a matter of like 1 or 2 years, I mean, that might be helpful to share that information. If it's a matter of 10, 12, maybe keep it to yourself. But I mean, that was something I was thinking about. But thank you for all you do, and I just wanted to share some of those thoughts.
Thank you very much. At this time, that's the end of our public comment. I guess I would just, I'm going to go out there on a limb. So I'm not a social media person. I stay away from all of this kind of stuff, just for my own sanity and life in general. There's certainly been plenty to divide us all as a community over the last few years. That's true as a country, as a state, whatever you want to say. I hope that there's things such as this that can work to pull us all together, that we have to all go after together for the right reasons. Again, thank you to all of the people who have shown an interest in the school board, who attend our meetings, who have chosen to run in the community. Congratulations to Tim, to Dr. Nichols, to Mr. Brandow. We look forward to you joining us in January. Congratulations to Mr. Bujak and Ms. Regas as well. I hope that we can all find a place to look to support Dutton, to look to support Caledonia schools, and to move forward together. So I appreciate all of my board members and our administrative staff and the amount of time that's been put into this. Thank you. I know that we will have, I'm sure there will be another extra meeting just for you, Kyle. But we will continue to work towards all of this. We have great teachers, we have great staff, We have great families here that deserve the things that we're talking about. And I hope that we can all wrap our head around it and move in the same direction. So thank you to everybody. If I could just have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
A second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.